Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us for the third webinar in our series, Securing Assets, a 360-degree Outlook. Now last time we heard from our friends at CPure, an introduction into the world of multi-party computation, threshold cryptography, and keyless wallets. And today we'll be continuing the journey, and we'll be looking at infrastructure security. So cybersecurity, which is beyond managing the private key. Now, today's session will be a keynote with our friends and partners at CYBAVO. So please join me in welcoming Roberto Machado, the Chief Product Officer at CYBAVO, to lead the keynote. And just before we jump into things, a gentle reminder that on the YouTube page in front of you, there is a chat box to the right, which allows interactivity during the session. So please do join in, ask questions, leave comments, and we'll be able to respond in the chat box during the session. Thank you. I really hope you enjoy the session. Roberto, over to you.
Thank you, Suren, for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. I am Roberto Machado, Product Director at CYBAVO. Before joining CYBAVO, I have been working in the cybersecurity and payments industry in Asia for 10 years now. Today, we will review a series of infrastructure security tips that can help protecting enterprise wallets beyond the private key management. During the premiere of this webinar, I would like to invite you to post questions and comments on the dialog box on the right side of this video. Please feel free to ask questions and we will answer you during the broadcast of the webinar. First of all, let me introduce CYBAVO. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a cybersecurity company that has developed a secure and user-friendly cryptocurrency wallet and custody solution for enterprise. Our company founders and development team have a long experience in cybersecurity industry, and before starting CYBAVO, some of them as security consultants for top cryptocurrency exchanges in Asia. On our first and second webinars, we discussed what are the challenges faced by traditional private key management approaches, and the compromise between security and funds liquidity that service providers had to make when choosing a key management model for their enterprise wallets. On the one hand, you want your funds to be as safe as possible, but on the other hand, you want to be able to easily operate and manage your crypto assets and offer your customers a timely service. If you are an end user, keeping your keys safe is relatively straightforward. You need to back up your private key to be protected in case you lose it. Don't use an email to transfer or save your private keys. Don't take screenshots or photos to save the private key. Don't use wallets from unknown sources. Don't import private keys to unknown third-party websites. If you follow these steps, you are very much covered. But as a service provider, this will not be enough. Virtual asset service providers, say cryptocurrency exchanges, fund managers, or token issuers, accumulate a large amount of crypto. On the one hand, they require these funds to be absolutely protected at all levels, and on the other hand, the service provider still needs to be able to operate with certain flexibility to be able to perform their customer operations. In this context, how the crypto assets, or in other words, the private keys, are protected is essential to the operation and the survivability of the company and their customer funds. Some VASPs choose to develop their solutions in-house, while some others look for specialized third-party wallet providers like CYBAVO to provide their secure enterprise wallets. In any case, a wallet developer and enterprise wallet provider, higher restrictions and protection standards need to be considered. Accumulating a large amount of cryptocurrency definitely turns virtual asset service providers into a target. These are some of the most recent major theft cases suffered by VASPs. During the first episode of this webinar series, we reviewed some of these hacks, and today we will mention some more. Some of these losses are caused by a very deficient management of the assets and the private keys. Some others are caused by technical vulnerabilities, lack of policies, while others are caused by a human error. It is estimated that a total of $4 billion in crypto was stolen only during 2019, and headlines about new exchange hacks and losses are still frequent today. One of the first points we discussed in previous webinars is that in the context of cryptocurrency, the private key is essentially the equivalent to your assets. As it is the only token that allows operate your funds, Losing the private key means losing the access to the funds. Keys have been traditionally stored on hot or cold storage, depending if they were isolated or connected to a network. Transactions have been signed with single signature or multi-sig scheme, but new approaches in private key management have been challenging these models now. In the previous webinar, Frank and the team at Cipure discussed the advantages that MPC technology and threshold sig were introducing in the private key management field, where MPC was eliminating the private key from the equation, and with it, the most obvious single point of failure in a wallet system. We have seen that threshold sig allows wallets to sign a transaction without having to hold the private key ever in the entire wallet lifecycle. This translates to the possibility to offer usability and asset liquidity without having to compromise on security. Our enterprise wallet CYBAVO Vault leverages Cipure's threshold sig technology for the private key management. But beyond that, we have developed a complete enterprise wallet system that adds protection beyond the private key management and addresses security from a holistic approach. As we have seen in the slide of past crypto theft, there are plenty of risk areas that need to be considered when developing an enterprise wallet. But why is this important? Haven't we secured the signature process and eliminated the private key theft risk from the picture already? Well, we can use very robust technologies such as MPC for the private key management to secure the private key management. But if as an attacker, I am able to operate the wallet illicitly with a stolen identity, I might be able to steal and transfer funds to my personal account without having to compromise the signature process at any moment. Today, we will focus on the other elements of a wallet system, and we will analyze some of the risks to which a wallet is exposed, and how to address those risks to prevent vulnerabilities that could lead to asset loss. This non-exhaustive analysis will give a broad vision of all the essential elements that come into play when protecting enterprise digital assets. There is a consideration that needs to be done before starting the wallet development itself, and that is third-party library integration, as it will affect further development stages. Although this issue is already a basic security project in OWASP, third-party libraries integration risk is still a commonly underrated concern in the development of cryptocurrency wallets. During the first episode of this webinar series, we saw the case of JavaScript event stream, where a hacker was able to introduce some malicious code in a very commonly used JavaScript library. This code was eventually used by a wallet provider, and the attackers were able to get users' private keys exploiting the malicious code. On another recent example, a team of security researchers discovered that more than 700 Ruby libraries in an official repository contain malicious code meant to hijack user clipboards. So it is important to be extremely cautious when using third-party libraries during the development of a wallet. Before integrating any third-party library, it is recommended to first do some proper research on the library we are considering to integrate, taking a special look on past known vulnerabilities. Preferably look for open source libraries, as they are under the scrutiny of larger community of developers and the code is available for revision. Once a library is chosen, a version must be fixed, followed by a code review and code security audit. And finally, it is necessary to perform a proper follow-up, subscribing to relevant library updates and checking regularly for security concerns and alerts. Wallet security is divided into these 5 areas. Blockchain security comprises the security from the blockchain network infrastructure itself, but also the security regarding the private key. How is the private key generated? Are the random processes random enough? Is there any risk for the creation process to be compromised at any point? Is there any single private key, or are we using a more robust approach like MPC? System security includes everything related to the system that hosts all the elements that form the wallet. This means operating system, libraries, and etc. Authentication security focuses on the ability to enforce that only authorized users are able to operate the wallet, and how the platform prevents unauthorized users access that could render the rest of the precautions useless. Node security focuses on the protection of the blockchain full nodes, which are also a functional part required by the wallet. Finally, wallet security focuses on the design of the wallet of application. We will visit all these modules with the exception of the blockchain security, as it falls out of the scope of the presentation today. For more information about the private key management and security, I strongly recommend the second episode of this webinar series. Let's dive first into some system security considerations. We will be running different elements of our platform on different hardware systems, either on local and cloud servers or on mobile devices. Regardless of the system where the wallet and the signer are running, Windows, Linux, iOS, or Android, system security detection capabilities and memory usage specifications must be considered. We will need to consider as well the specific characteristics and threats that each one of the platforms may introduce. In the case of our solution, we can differentiate two different types of systems, divided into mobile and non-mobile platforms. If we focus on non-mobile devices running the wallet solution, we must first acknowledge that traditional antivirus programs or firewalls have limitations and are not enough to protect a system safeguarding an enterprise wallet. In a platform like ours, it's recommended to follow a more restricted approach. For instance, our solution runs in a hardened operating system, a highly personalized OS which only includes the essential libraries required to run our platform. This fact helps reducing the attack surface. Blacklisting all processes by default, using sandboxing to eliminate privilege escalation risk, and leverage monitoring tools is also essential to be in control of the health and integrity of the system hosting the platform. It is very important to be protected against ransom attacks by encrypting the system configuration files as well as performing regular database backups. Integrity verifications will reduce the risk and help detecting any sort of system tampering. Finally, it's also very important to be absolutely conscious about the residual information that might remain in the system memory, and to use memory guard and other methods to protect sensitive information from the risk of a potential memory dump forced by a malicious process being attached to the system processes. Our enterprise wallet, CYBAVO Vault, uses a mobile app for secure multi-factor authentication at the login and the transaction approval. To ensure that these processes are secured, the mobile application security has also been enforced at different levels. Mobile devices are vulnerable to different modifications that can compromise the security of the device and can help a malicious user to retrieve sensitive information that a user might be introducing, like user credentials, secret PIN codes, etc. It is for that reason that our app executes an essential security analysis at every startup of the application to help detecting if the mobile device has been compromised in any way. If you check the video on the screen, you will see the startup process of CYBAVO authentication app. It includes a complete security check to detect if the device has been jailbroken or rooted, if the location has been mocked, if the storage has been tampered, or if the application is running on an emulator. The mobile application must also be protected against reverse engineering that could compromise its integrity. That is why mechanisms like hardening or code obfuscation with tools like ProGuard must be performed as well. When updating the application, a cloud verification of the app integrity must be performed to detect any type of tampering attempt. The app must also leverage the secure storage mechanism provided by the mobile operating system, like Android Key Store or iOS Keychain, to safely store any key being used. Pins introduced by the user must never be stored or kept in the memory. Memory guard or other mechanism must be used to ensure that any information temporarily stored in the memory is not accessed by any unauthorized process, and memory must be cleared regularly. Finally, the application might be potentially used to introduce sensitive information, as it is the case in the CYBAVO Alt app. It is strongly discouraged to use any type of third-party input methods, such as keyboards, as they might introduce keyloggers or store online the introduced information. In case of our authentication app, we have developed a secure keyboard for PIN introduction. So far, we analyzed some guidelines on how to get protected against potential intrusions caused by exploiting system vulnerabilities. Our next focus area is authentication security. All the previous protection efforts can result fruitless if a weak authentication mechanism leaves opportunities for a malicious actor to impersonate a legitimate user. If a user is compromised, an attacker can leverage that user account to trigger apparently legitimate transactions without stealing any private key or compromising the signature system and process at all. To avoid this type of threats, we need a proper authentication mechanism in place so we can ensure the accounts cannot be compromised and only the rightful users can operate the platform, and always within their clearance level. To provide some perspective, CYBAVO Vault offers a web interface for the wallet management. Users with a wallet creator permission can log into the web interface to create wallets and define wallet policies. The CYBAVO secure authentication app we saw in the mobile system security section is used to provide multi-factor authentication when a user wants to log into the web interface. Users also need to double confirm their identity when they have to perform critical operations in the platform, such as wallet creation, policies update, and also when they want to trigger a transaction from the web interface. In terms of authentication, we cannot rely uniquely on the traditional user password mechanism. This is a very outdated and high-risk authentication method. Passwords can be cracked or can be guessed. It is very common to hear about account databases being stolen and then sold on the dark web. Also, users tend to reuse passwords across different services. Hackers know also that fact, and they will try to reuse account credentials obtained illicitly by database breaches in different platforms to log in to different services from the same user. An improvement over the only password-based approach is to use an additional second layer of authentication. That method is called multi-factor authentication or second-factor authentication in a specific case of two factors. This method requires a second mechanism to identify the user, like an email link, an SMS code, or a time-limited one-time password generated on an MFA app. However, this method still has some limitations. Email accounts can be compromised by the same password reutilization method we just explained. SIM duplication is a technique that has already facilitated few attacks where the hacker was able to duplicate the victim's SIM card and then receive the SMS containing the access code to the platform. Also, some time-based OTP apps can also be vulnerable, since the seeds used to generate the codes can be reused without the legitimate user noticing. A more robust method is to add public key cryptography infrastructure to the MFA process and combine it with a unique ID per user to bind a user authentication app with the system, securing at the same time the communication channel between the two ends. Cryptographically binding a user device with a service also creates a unique, secure communication channel between the user and the system. The user is able to notice when someone else has used the account to bind another service, and it will be kicked out from the session if someone else logs in. Secure authentication also needs to consider environmental parameters, such as geolocation or IP address, since these are also factors that can determine the legitimacy of an access attempt. This on the screen is an example of a hack that occurred about a year ago to the wallet provider GitHub. An attacker targeted the server storing the user access API tokens. With those stolen API tokens, the attacker was able to initiate a large number of API calls to the system from a limited number of unusual IPs, using the wallet owner's legal tokens. The system recognized the IPs as valid, and the attacker was able to withdraw up to 23 million Ripple, an equivalent to $5 million US. In this example, an IP address whitelisting policy or detecting the geolocation from where the access attempts were performed would have helped detecting and potentially stopping this unusual activity. In this specific case, enforcing content segmentation for the API token and secret between the user and the database of the APIs can also help reduce the risk of this type of attack. But it is not only important that the system is able to detect the type of attempts. giving the user visibility over environmental information from the request whenever there is a login request, such as location, request time, operating system, web browser, or IP address, can help the user detecting malicious login attempts. This screenshot displays the information a CYBAVO Vault user will be able to see on his authentication app whenever there is a login attempt. With this information in hand, the user can evaluate the legitimacy of a login attempt and reject in case something is off. The next element to be considered is blockchain node security. A blockchain node is the outmost element in the system, as it acts as a server in the decentralized network. Some of the basic functions include to broadcast transactions and to keep the ledger synchronized. Nodes usually also pack some additional features like mining wallet. As blockchain nodes are elements that require to be constantly connected, they often become a target to attackers. During our first webinar, we saw an example of a vulnerability on the Ethereum node called ETH Black Valentine's Day. This node vulnerability allowed the attackers to steal funds without requiring to take control of the private key itself for stealing the funds. The attack exploited a malfunction in the wallet feature included in all versions of Ethereum nodes. The code included a method called unlock account, which allowed to transfer funds after introducing the password for a single time, and until a lock account method was called back. The system could scan the specific ports of thousands of nodes to trigger a send transaction command, and in any node in the unlock account state would make a transfer of funds to the address specified by the attacker. The attackers managed to steal more than 46,000 Ethereum by this method without stealing a single private key. These are different guidelines that can be followed to eliminate unnecessary risk and protect blockchain nodes. The first recommendation is to reduce the attack surface by eliminating the risk associated with functions that are not essential to our wallet system. For example, removing the mining wallet from the node. By eliminating the redundant features, we do not only reduce the attack surface, but we also help to keep high reliability and performance on the node. Establishing IP-based control or access control lists can help reducing the risk of targeted attacks. This is especially useful on private chains, where an access control list can stop malicious nodes from joining their chain. Cluster architecture configurations can also help reducing the risk of the nodes being traced back, and therefore reducing and eliminating the risk of targeted and DDoS attacks. We are now going to focus on the wallet security. The wallet is the element responsible for the user interaction, balance display, policy configuration, as well as for creating unsigned transactions, send them to be signed by the signing machine, and forward the signed transactions to be broadcasted by the secure blockchain node. As we have seen previously in the node security section, the blockchain node is going to be one of the most exposed elements in the system, with regular network communication. Because of that reason, it is recommended to segregate our wallet logic from the blockchain node to reduce the risk of an external intrusion that could be potentially initiated from the blockchain node itself. This is an example of a real attack that affected Electrum wallets back in December 2018. The attackers leveraged the fact that the private key was not separated from the wallet logic. In this large-scale attack, hackers were able to run up to 70% of network with malicious nodes. The attackers would exploit a wallet vulnerability to throw up an update message to the wallet users connected to those malicious nodes. This message would lead users to connect to a malicious site and download the upgrade for their wallet. This upgrade contained malicious code, which could directly give the attackers access to the user's passwords and private keys, information that was accessible directly from the user's wallet. There are different lessons that can be extracted from this previous example, and one of them is the importance of isolating the signing mechanism from the wallet logic. The signing machine is the element responsible for verifying a signature request, coordinating the signature of the original raw transaction and returning the signed transaction. The signing machine can range from very simple mechanism as an offline single key signature to more complex configurations. In our case, we use CPU's threshold seek technology to coordinate an MPC signature by multiple signing parties. By segregating these three modules, wallet segregated from the blockchain node and the signing machine segregated from the wallet, we can drastically reduce the risk of an intrusion that could reach the signing mechanism and the impact of intermediate intrusions. Besides the private key management, a wallet system might also use cryptographic keys for different purposes, like intermediate keys, that also will require to be protected. When encrypting any type of key, it is important to rely on robust and vastly tested encryption algorithms like EAS or RSA, instead of using your own encryption algorithms, less tested and which could contain unknown vulnerabilities. Any keys used internally should never be placed in the code or in any plain text configuration file. We also need to be certain that no code containing any key is ever placed on any cloud system. Currently, there are automated robots that will crawl services like GitHub, searching for keys, account credentials, mnemonic phrases, or any sensitive information related to cryptocurrency wallets. System databases and system configuration files are critical to the integrity of the application, and they should also be encrypted and backed up. By encrypting these files and databases, we can eliminate the risk of tampering, and performing frequent backups can increase the system resilience against ransom attacks. Even if all the different modules in a system are safe, it is critical to ensure that all the communication channels used between different modules or with any external element are properly protected. To illustrate this point, we can take a look on the hack that IOTA wallet suffered earlier this year. Hackers exploited a vulnerability in a third-party developed trading module being used by IOTA wallet. The attacker used the vulnerability in the module communication process to perform a man-in-the-middle attack to inject malicious JavaScript code and obtain API keys and steal, therefore, the user seeds and password, especially for some high-value users. The consequences were more than 2 million USD stolen in IOTA tokens, and the entire network shut down temporarily. These attacks highlight the importance of protecting with additional level of end-to-end encryption all communication channels, to make sure that even if we lose the S on HTTPS, all communications remain safe and resistant to sniffers and man-in-the-middle attacks. So, to finalize, these are the key takeaways that summarize the concept that we have seen during today's webinar. New enterprise wallet solutions need to be able to offer liquidity and usability to service providers without compromising on security. MPC technology like Secure Threshold SIG eliminate the risk of private key becoming the single point of failure. Secure key management is not enough to ensure the fund's security, and institutional wallets need to consider security beyond it. Wallet systems need to focus on key management security, system security, blockchain node security, authentication security, and wallet application security. CYBAVO provides a turnkey enterprise wallet design with a full-stack security approach. With that, I would like to conclude today's presentation. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please do not hesitate to send us any email if you have any question or if you would like to know more about us. With that, I send it back to you, Suren. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Now, I'd like to say a huge thank you to CYBAVO and especially to Roberto for taking us on a really interesting journey, exploring the different elements of infrastructure security there. Now, if you'd like to know any more about any of the aspects that you've seen in this webinar series, please don't hesitate to visit our website at threshold.com or directly contact us at sales@threshold.com. Now, next time, we'll be exploring the issue of distributed trust, removing single points of failure. This keynote session will be delivered and led by our very own Chief Technology Officer here at Threshold, Hakeem Mamoni. And what we'll be covering is what is needed to deliver higher degrees of security, resilience, and availability. Now, the registration tickets are in the description box below. So please go ahead, grab your ticket now, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much for joining us today. Really hope you enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you next time.